Okay, so we've had the opportunity to look at our school-wide data when we had our data meetings on last week, talking about our MAP testing data to find out where our kids were in the fall versus where they are now in the winter to look at those increases. So we saw some strengths and some weaknesses in our school data. And we know that there are areas of need or areas of concern. So as a school leader, one of the things that I have to do is to empower our leadership team to be able to address the areas that we see. Of course, strengthen the areas that need to be improved, but also to highlight those areas where we have strength and then to continue to push so that we don't see a pattern where we fall backwards. So in order to help strengthen our classroom, to help strengthen our school data, one of the things that we have to do is make sure that we're focusing on classroom instruction, like daily instruction, because that is what is going to continue to push. So we have to focus our time, our energy, and our efforts in making sure that we're in classrooms and that we are supporting teachers. So we're going to take a look at our school-wide data right now, and then we're going to see what our school-wide data is telling us. And then before we conclude with this meeting, we're going to talk about how we can best support teachers moving forward, and then what our focus is going to be through classroom observations, which we are required to do every week. So as of now, we have a total of 204 classroom observations. In the last 30 days, we've done 66 total observations between the four of us, which is good. So that virtual time that we were out allowed us to help do some virtual observations, which are not as good as being in person, but you still get to see solid instruction. So let's take a look at what we're seeing in our observations. So we're going to actually look at the observations. Before we do that, let's talk about some of the things that you all are seeing when you go into classrooms. We're going to pull this up in just a minute. What are some things that you all are seeing when you go in that can assist us with our future endeavors when we plan for what needs to happen moving forward?
My big thing that have been harping on, I guess, since the beginning of the year is teacher talk.
Okay.
Still trying to get away from some of the teacher talk and giving the kids a chance to facilitate some of the learning in the classroom.
Okay. What are you seeing, Ms. Baker, when you go in the classroom?
That was one thing that I saw last week when we were virtual. And I kind of did a little bit of shifting with some of my observations from going in during the green band and was wanting to see some of the reading and responding. And I was noticing that when they were reading the story and the teachers were stopping and asking the comprehension questions. But like Tiffany said, it was a lot of teacher directed. So a lot of the times I was putting down in that bottom one, the refinement, maybe allowing students to come up with some questions. And so that's one thing that I would like to see more of is the students actually doing that. And it actually reminded me, if you remember from when we were at the Title I conference with Lester Laminack and how he had said that was a great way for teachers to assess if their students were comprehending the story, because then, the students are actually thinking about the story. And, it reminded me, of course, of like what you were saying yesterday, too. Talking with parents, yes, your child can read it, but are they comprehending the actual story?
Yes, comprehending is very different than
actual reading, yes.
Hubert, what are you seeing when you go in the classroom?
Well, to tie in with the student-teacher interaction, along the lines of questioning and the depth of knowledge, I see a lot of basic questions, not a lot that requires higher order thinking skills.
Yes.
A lot of the DOK one, just a little, recall or like a yes or no type of question.
What I've noticed is when we go in, the children aren't writing anything. It's a lot of oral discussion, but the children are not actually having to apply anything. And we know that applying what's being taught helps them to retain it. So I'm not seeing that, as well as the student engagement that they need to have. In some classrooms, you see where the kids, the teacher may say, turn and talk to a partner, or I need you to do this after a question has been asked, or they have to write their answer instead of just a yes or no or a hand raise. Because when the kids raise their hand, you can only call on one child at a time. So you really don't know if 20 other kids in the class know it or not, because you only call on that one. So we have to move them from just asking a question and choosing one child to answer, but getting them all to respond. So that checking for understanding definitely has to be there. And when assessment time comes, it's almost too late to find out if they have gotten it then. So those formative assessments are going to be very critical moving forward, making sure that they formatively assess. And a formative assessment doesn't always have to be something that they put in the grade book. It's just a simple day-to-day, how are my kids doing? Are they getting this? And then another thing that we're going to talk about in just a minute, I'm going to show you one of the observation pieces in here that's new. And we're going to talk about spend some time talking about that, because it has the components that we want to see when we go into a classroom. But we need to start talking to the kids. What do they know? We need to ask them, what are you learning today? How do you know you've learned this? We have non-negotiables and our instructional expectations, standards, objectives should be posted when we go in classroom. If we are not identifying those things when we go in, we need to make note of that and then talk to the teacher, because those are all things that are expected. Not for us, it's for the students, so that they are able to look back at, okay, I'm learning this today, this is what I'm expected to do, and then make sure that teachers are communicating to students what it is that they are expected to learn. I've had conversations with kids going into classrooms. Most of them can tell you what they're doing today. They don't know why they're doing it and what's going to be the outcome from it later. So all of these things have to come into play when we're looking at improving student achievement across the board, and making sure that we are very intentional about where we're focusing our efforts and how we're going to continue to move our school forward. And we each have a part to play in this. As I shared with you a few minutes ago, we are all instructional leaders. Assistant principal, reading coach, facilitator, principal, we are all instructional leaders, and we all have a responsibility to instruction and making sure that our students are able to achieve. So let's take a look at, let's go into observations. Ms. Baker, I think yours is up first. Let's look at this new questioning. This new tool. When you go in, it is called this one, Learning Intention and Success Criteria. I'm not sure if you've used this one yet, but this is one that our district is pushing us towards, because it covers all of those components that you want to. So, learning intentions. Ms. Baker, your name's up first, so I'm just going to use you. I will not submit it, of course, but I have to open it so that you're able to see what that looks like. So, learning intention and success criteria, of course, you choose whatever grade it is that you're going in to observe. You look at the content area. I didn't do that. Let me come over here so that I can move it. Okay. Then, the teacher used the following ways of communicating learning intentions and success criteria. Success criteria, you know what success criteria is? Let me ask that question first. I don't want to assume. Do you know what success criteria is? Okay, success criteria is what it is that the students are going to be able to do at the end of the lesson, and then how you going to know that they did it. What's the criteria you're using to be able to determine that the student has mastered whatever it is? If it's double-digit addition, how are you going to know at the end that students have mastered that, and what criteria are you going to use? Students need to know how they're going to be assessed at the end of a particular lesson, so that they, you know how when we were in college, we had to use rubrics for our assignments when we were writing papers or we're doing projects or whatever. It's the same way with our kids. They need to know how, whatever it is that they're being expected to do, how they're going to be assessed on that, and what criteria is going to be used. So, the teacher used the following ways of communicating learning intentions and success criteria. Was that evident? Did you see it through oral, through written displays? Did the teacher communicate it orally? Was it written on chart paper? Did she demonstrate it? So these are all indicators that you look